In the peaceful village known as Lush Green, famous for its abundant water and fertile land, there lived a woman named Chioma and her husband Emeka. They had been married for 10 years, but despite their deep love for each other, they had no children. This caused great sadness in their hearts, especially for Chioma. "My love," Emeka would often say, holding his wife's hand, "don't worry too much. Whether we have children or not, I will always love you." But Chioma couldn't help worrying. She tried everything she could think of to have a baby. They visited many hospitals, where doctors would shake their heads and say things like, "We can't find anything wrong. Keep trying." They went to churches, where priests and pastors would pray over them. "Have faith," the religious leaders would say. "God's time is the best time." They even visited traditional healers, who gave them various herbs to drink. "Drink this mixture every morning before sunrise," one healer told them, handing over a bitter-looking concoction. "And this one must be taken at midnight," another would insist. But nothing worked. The situation became worse when Emeka's family started pressuring them. His mother, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Okafor, would visit their home regularly to remind them of their failure. "Emeka, my son," she would say, ignoring Chioma's presence, "you need to think about your future. We can find you another wife who can give you children." These words cut through Chioma's heart like sharp knives. After one such visit, she broke down crying in their bedroom. "Please," she begged her mother-in-law, "give me more time. I will have a child, I promise." "How much more time?" Mrs. Okafor demanded. 10 years is already too long. Our family needs an heir." One sunny market day, while Chioma was shopping for vegetables, she ran into her old friend Bimbo. They hadn't seen each other for years. "Chioma!" Bimbo exclaimed, hugging her friend. "You look troubled. What's wrong?" They sat down at a local food store, and Chioma poured out her heart to her friend. She told her about the 10 childless years, the pressure from her in-laws, and her fear of losing her husband. Bimbo listened carefully, stirring her drink thoughtfully. Then she leaned forward and whispered, "I know someone who can help you." Chioma's eyes lit up with hope. "Really? Who?" "I've tried everything, Bimbo. Everything." "This is different," Bimbo said mysteriously. "This person has never failed." "But..." She hesitated. "It's far from here, in a place few people dare to go." "I don't care where it is," Chioma said firmly. "I'll go anywhere, do anything to have a child." "Are you sure?" Bimbo asked. "Once we start this journey, there's no turning back." "I'm sure," Chioma replied without hesitation. That evening, Chioma went home to tell her husband she needed to visit her mother in the village. It was the first time she had ever lied to Emeka, and the guilt ate at her heart. "Of course you should go," Emeka said kindly, reaching into his pocket. "Here, take this money for your mother and siblings." His kindness made her feel even worse about lying, but Chioma reminded herself it was all for their future happiness. The next morning, she met Bimbo at the bus station. They traveled for hours, switching from one bus to another, going deeper into unknown territory. Finally, they had to continue on foot, walking into a dense forest that seemed to grow darker and more menacing with each step. "Bimbo," Chioma whispered, clutching her friend's arm, "are you sure about this?" The air around them felt heavy and damp. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, and the ground beneath their feet was soft with rotting leaves. An unusual cold settled around them, despite it being a warm season. "Trust me," Bimbo assured her, though her voice trembled slightly. After walking for what seemed like hours, they came upon an old hut. It looked abandoned, with its thatched roof partially caved in and vines growing up its walls. A strange melody seemed to float from inside, though Chioma couldn't tell if she was really hearing it or if her frightened mind was playing tricks on her. "We're here," Bimbo announced, her voice barely above a whisper. As they approached the hut, Chioma heard what sounded like a child's laughter. The sound sent chills down her spine. She grabbed Bimbo's hand, ready to run away, but before they could move, the door of the hut slammed shut behind them. In the dim light, a figure emerged from the shadows. Chioma had to bite her tongue to keep from screaming. The being before them was unlike anything she had ever seen, half man, half snake. His upper body was human, though covered in scales, while from the waist down, he had the long, muscular body of a python. His face was human but marked with snake-like patterns, and his eyes were vertical slits that seemed to glow in the darkness. "I am Omos," the creature announced in a voice that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. "Why have you disturbed my solitude?" Chioma's voice shook as she answered, I want a child." Amu's snake-like eyes seemed to peer into her soul. "A child you shall have," he said, "but there is a price. You must stay here with me for 3 days and 3 nights." Chioma looked at Bimbo in horror. Her friend nodded encouragingly. "Remember why you came," Bimbo whispered. "Think of your marriage, your husband, your future." Amu's voice grew harder. "Choose quickly. Either you accept my terms, or neither of you will leave this place alive." With tears in her eyes, Chioma agreed. Before leaving, Omos gave Bimbo a stern warning. "Speak of what you've seen here to no one," he hissed, "or your tongue will turn to ash in your mouth." The 3 days that followed were the most terrifying of Chioma's life. She would never speak of what happened in that hut, but the memories would haunt her dreams for years to come. When she finally returned home, she looked exhausted and disheveled. Emeka was shocked by her appearance. "My love, what happened?" he asked, reaching for her. "Did something happen at your mother's house?" Chioma couldn't meet his eyes. "I'm fine," she mumbled, heading straight for the bathroom. "I just need to rest." For weeks afterward, Emeka noticed changes in his wife. She seemed distant and jumped at small noises. Sometimes he would find her crying for no apparent reason. "Please tell me what's wrong," he would beg, but Chioma would only shake her head and force a smile. Then, 2 months later, Chioma discovered she was pregnant. Despite the circumstances of conception, her joy was genuine. When she told Emeka, he lifted her off her feet and spun her around, tears of happiness in his eyes. "Finally," he exclaimed. "Our prayers have been answered." News spread quickly through the village. Emeka's family organized a huge celebration. Even his mother seemed to soften toward Chioma. "I knew you would not disappoint us," Mrs. Okafor said, patting Chioma's hand. The words were kind, but they made Chioma's stomach turn with guilt. The pregnancy progressed normally, though Chioma had strange dreams of snakes and sometimes thought she could hear that eerie melody from the forest. When the baby finally came, it was a beautiful girl they named MMA, meaning beauty. As MMA grew, she became known throughout the village for her extraordinary beauty. She had emerald green eyes, unusual for their people, and skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. Her figure was perfect, and her smile could light up a room. Young men began asking about her even before she reached marriageable age. "Your daughter is truly blessed," people would tell Chioma and Emeka. "She must have been touched by the gods." But Chioma would feel a chill whenever people said such things, remembering the true source of her daughter's unusual beauty. What nobody knew was that MMA had inherited more than just beauty from her true father. Every night, when the village was asleep, she would transform into a creature like Omos, half human, half snake. She would slither through the darkness to the forest, where Omos waited for her. Together, they would sing an ancient melody, their voices twining together in the darkness, child of 2 worlds, bound by scales and skin, dark secrets hidden deep within. When moon rises and sun takes flight, we claim our true forms in the night. As MMA grew older, Omos began to poison her mind against her human family, especially Emeka. "He is not your true father," Omos would tell her. "He is keeping your mother from us. We should be together, the 3 of us, as a real family. But he has always been kind to me," MMA would protest, though with less conviction each time. Kind. Omos would scoff. He is kind because he doesn't know what you really are. If he knew, he would kill you without hesitation. Gradually, Omos convinced MMA that they needed to eliminate Emika. They spent months planning how to do it without raising suspicion, but fate had other plans. One stormy night, as MMA made her way through the forest in her snake form, she didn't notice the village's most skilled hunter, Dyke, who was tracking a group of antelopes. Dyke had been hunting since childhood and had never seen anything like what he glimpsed through the rain, a creature with the upper body of a woman and the lower body of a snake. Without hesitation, he raised his gun and fired. The shot caught MMA in her snake-like tail. She managed to escape through the wet grass, leaving a trail of blood that the rain quickly washed away. The next morning, Dyke went straight to the village king's palace. "My king," he announced to the assembled elders, "there is a monster living among us. I saw it with my own eyes in the forest last night, half human, half snake." The news caused panic in the village. People began locking their doors at night and keeping their children inside. The king, an elderly man known for his wisdom, called his guards together. "Search every house in the village," he commanded. "Look for anyone with an unexplained injury. Whatever this creature is, it cannot hide a gunshot wound." When MMA heard about the search, she knew her secret would soon be discovered. The wound in her tail had manifested as a deep gash in her leg in her human form, and it wasn't healing as quickly as her usual injuries. "I have to end this now," she thought desperately. That night, instead of going to the forest, she transformed inside her home and slithered to where Emika was sleeping. She looked at the man who had raised her, who had loved her as his own daughter, and felt a moment of hesitation. But Amu's words echoed in her mind, "He is not your true father. He would kill you if he knew what you are." With a swift strike, she sank her venomous fangs into Emika's throat. Chioma, who had been unable to sleep, heard the strange sounds from their bedroom and went to investigate. The sight that greeted her destroyed what was left of her sanity, her husband dead on the bed, and her daughter, her beautiful MMA, transformed into a creature just like Omos. Chioma's scream brought the whole village running. The king's guards, already on alert because of Dyke's story, arrived first. When they saw the monster that had once been MMA, they didn't hesitate. Multiple spears pierced her snake-like body before she could escape. As MMA lay dying, she transformed back into her human form. Her last words were the beginning of that eerie melody she used to sing with Omos, child of two worlds. The sight of her daughter's death and the revelation of what her bargain with Omos had created was too much for Chioma. Her mind shattered completely. She ran into the forest, laughing and crying, calling out for Omos. Some say she found him, and they lived together in that decaying hut. Others say she died in the forest, lost and alone. The village never fully recovered from these events. Parents would warn their children, "Be careful what price you're willing to pay for your desires. Some costs are too high, and some bargains are better left unmade." And on dark nights, when the wind blows just right, people say you can still hear that haunting melody drifting from the forest, a duet between a monster and a madwoman, mourning what was lost and what never should have been. In the years that followed, the story of the snake child became a cautionary tale in lush green village. It taught people that desperation can lead to terrible choices, and that some miracles come with hidden curses. The villagers learned to be content with what they had and to think carefully about the prices they were willing to pay for their desires. As for Bimbo, she kept her promise and never spoke of what she had seen in that hut in the forest. But sometimes, on quiet nights, she would wake up screaming, remembering the sight of Omos and wondering if she had done the right thing by leading her friend to him. The forest where Amu's hut stood became forbidden territory. No one would go there, no matter how valuable the hunting might be. They say the trees there grew darker and more twisted, and strange lights could sometimes be seen dancing between the branches. Some say that other desperate women still seek out Omos, willing to pay any price for their desires. But if they do, they keep their bargains to themselves, remembering the fate of Chioma and her snake child.